Hey guys, and welcome to this video on Pluto in the second house. If you have Pluto in the second house in your astrology chart, this video is for you. And if you're wondering whether you should use your whole sign or Placidus placement, I recommend using both because I think they're both accurate. So in this video, we're going to talk about the mythology of Pluto. We're going to talk about the nature of the second house, and then we're going to talk about what Pluto means in that second house. I have my laptop with me, so I will be glancing down from time to time at my notes that I made. Also, this Thursday, I'll be doing a mini course on how to scan and understand the major components of your astrology chart. This is a crash course in understanding the natal chart. So if you know the signs, the planets, and you've ever opened your circle chart and gone, oh my God, I don't know what to do, you need this course. Click the link below. We're going to run it live. You can join me live, or you can ask questions. And even if you can't make the live broadcast, you can still get the replay. So check out the link below for that. And we are also doing live mini readings on this channel. We're starting something new. So if you want to be a part of that, there is a video already scheduled, a live video. In this video, I will be assessing one natal placement in your chart. And you can either PayPal me, Venmo me, or you can use the super chat feature because this channel now has super chat. So come join us live on Friday. It'll be tons of fun. Now let's get into the video on Pluto in the second house. Okay, so we're starting with the mythology here of Hades. And you know, as I was doing research trying to find different myths and stories about Hades, the real main story that I kept finding, the only one really that popped up, was the Persephone myth. And so the Persephone myth says that Persephone was a child. She was a maiden. Her mother was Demeter, who harvested the crops. And Pluto kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. Now, some versions of this story, and thank you to the viewer who mentioned this after the Pluto in the first house video, because I had forgotten to put it in the video, which is that some versions of this myth say that she went willingly. Others say she was kidnapped. So either way, he takes her to the underworld. And in the underworld, you know, he's got her down there. And, you know, one of the other things of this story I didn't know before was that Cupid shot him with a bow and with one of his darts, you know, Cupid. So apparently, you know, Hades was actually pretty lonely down there watching over all these departed souls. And so because of this, Cupid shot him with a dart. Well, needless to say, Demeter was not happy that her daughter was gone. She was actually so devastated that the time that Persephone was gone, the fields didn't grow and they weren't harvested, and this is how we have winter. So in order to get Persephone back, Ceres, or Demeter, you know, she ended up fighting for her daughter, and then Pluto made this kind of deal that he would let her go. But this is the thing. He got her to eat pomegranate seeds. And so the story goes, she didn't know that that would trap her in the underworld. So by eating these pomegranate seeds, it kind of sealed her fate, that she wasn't allowed to leave. And it was a certain amount of time for each seed that she ate. And so Pluto was able to somehow finagle his way into keeping her half of the year. And so now Persephone goes with her mother half of the year and then stays down in the underworld the other half of the year. And so the story goes, this is when we have winter and we have spring. This is how the story goes. And what else? Okay, so now I'm going to talk more about just like Pluto and what he signifies. He's known as the god of wealth because jewels and diamonds come from the underworld. He's even referenced as the bringer of wealth in some of the research I did. A lot of the research I did was from mythopedia.com. So it's Pluto in Roman mythology and Hades in Greek mythology. So what we know of Pluto today is actually a kind of a combination of one, you know, Hades, which we know, and the other one is Pluton. Pluton, also known as Dispater, had power over the underworld and mineral wealth. The underworld is known as the resting place of departed souls. And this is kind of where the story goes, that Pluto was watching over the departed souls, doing his duty. And he was just so lonely that Cupid shot a dart at him so that he wouldn't be alone anymore. Another thing about the underworld and the Persephone myth to be aware of is that the Persephone myth isn't meant to be some scary, terrible thing where she was kidnapped and taken to the underworld, because the part of the story that is so redemptive is that she becomes queen of the underworld. And the underworld is the metaphor for our subconscious mind, which if we don't have a handle on our subconscious mind, it can feel like hell. But when we can harness our subconscious mind, then we rule over our own underworld. Pluto's dad was Saturn, which means his brother was Jupiter. Jupiter originally freed Pluto from his father's wrath. He also had Poseidon as a brother, and then Ceres, Juno, and Vesta were his sisters. Now, this is where it gets a little cringy, because that means that Persephone was his niece. So that's all I have for the actual myth of Pluto. We're going to talk a bit now about what Pluto means in the astrology chart. So by sign, Pluto is going to show generational themes because it spends between 14 and 30 years in a sign. And so the sign your Pluto is in is not personal. Although some people really do resonate with their Pluto placement, it's everyone born the same time as you also has that same placement. So it's not a personal planet. We need to look to the house to see the personal way that Pluto shows up to your personality. Also by house, what Pluto tells us is the way that you moved through your past life, your way of being, your approach to life in a past life. And these themes can come very, very strong also in this life. It can also show where you have the biggest potential to transform in this life. That doesn't mean you will. Not everyone does, right? Lots of people have Pluto in the second house. Not everyone becomes a millionaire who has that placement. It is something that some of us do. Some of us do transform our charts like that. Some do not. I don't think it's good or bad. Pluto also has this polarity point, and the polarity point is the opposite house from whatever your natal Pluto is. So if you're watching this video and your natal Pluto is in that second house, then the polarity point is the 8th house. Now this is the energy to embody, to balance out that Pluto, to learn the evolutionary lesson. It's also going to be totally outside of your comfort zone. Usually for most of us, it's like the last thing you want to do. But this placement is very much about going beyond the world, right? Because even in the research that I did, it said that Pluto had, quote, little interest in the world of men. And this is how all of our Plutos are. It's like we're not interested in the worldly possessions or the worldly things. It's our soul. It's what our soul wants. Even if the world wants something else from us or has conditioned us to believe that we should want something else, that Pluto is kind of like our soul, kind of nagging us to, or even just nag isn't the right word, but like calling us, beckoning us to, learn these evolutionary lessons, which go far beyond the lessons of this world. So now on to the nature of the second house. The second house in astrology is a succedent house, which means it succeeds an angular house. It follows the angular houses 1, 4, 7, and 10. So succedent houses are 2, 5, 8, and 11. This house, the second house, is really the house of value. It's the house of how we value ourselves. It's our ability to make money, our desire for money and power, the power that comes with it. Our possessions fall under the second house, our skills that we can make money off of, our value in the marketplace, our self-esteem, anything we own, including the car we drive, the land we live on, and the food, down to the food in our fridge, all falls under the second house in astrology. So now let's go on to the good stuff, which is Pluto in the second house. Okay, so with this placement, there is a strong need to develop self-sufficiency. So people with this Pluto in the second house can feel like they have themes in their life of not being self-sufficient versus being self-sufficient. And for those who have had those themes, the times in their life where they're not self-sufficient, it's like if they don't do anything to move towards self-sufficiency, the situation kind of implodes, or some kind of crisis happens where they have to move on and find other ways to do things. So it's very interesting because that 8th house of merging with others is the polarity point for this Pluto. So some people might assume that means you're supposed to depend on other people, but it's not about that. For this Pluto placement, the true evolutionary lesson is to merge with other people while being fully dependent on the self. If you take nothing away from this video, that is a thing to remember. But now we're going to get into all the details. Some people with this placement can be very, very withdrawn into themselves. They can almost live as if they have like their focus, a very narrow focus, kind of being oblivious to outside experiences, somehow cutting down their life experience into something more limited. Okay, so if you have been expanding your horizons, if you have been doing new things, going new places, meeting new people, traveling, anything like that, especially involving other people, then you have already started working on this evolutionary lesson of your Pluto. Good job. If you have not, that is okay. So again, people can have blinders on. They can get stuck in their own thinking, their own way of thinking. They can become too attached to their own way of seeing things. They can be very, very stubborn in their own viewpoints. They can assume everyone else thinks the way they do, or that they're right, or be almost condescending of other people's ideas. There is this tendency to be very, very, very fixated on the self. So people with this placement can isolate in their environment. They can retreat into their own little world. They can be sort of guarded on their place of living, their possessions. They can be very, very, very controlling and upset if you touch their stuff. Do not touch their stuff, because that possessiveness, that ownership, that heaviness of Pluto in this house will cause that person to probably be very attached to their possessions. And this is something that, some people with this placement could lose their possessions at some point in time. That does tend to happen sometimes. I have this placement. I have lost my things a few times. People have just given my stuff away sometimes, or taken it in certain cases. So yeah. And those cases are the cases where I wasn't being as self-sufficient. So some people may relate to that as well. There is an extreme focus on security. Material life is very, very, very important for these people. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be rich if you have this placement, because your material life can be important to you and you have a lot of money, or your material life can be important to you and you don't have very much at all. So it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily become a millionaire, right? But that the things that you have or don't have will matter to you extremely. And, some people with this placement, they do end up creating wealth for themselves. But then, what happens is usually this sort of existential crisis, because they realize that now they're still not happy. Okay, so this age-old story you hear celebrities saying all the time, how they wish everyone got wealthy. I think Jim Carrey said that, so they could have to realize that doesn't actually make you happy. That is actually part of the lesson with this placement, is to learn that security doesn't equal happiness. You are not your bank account. You are not your things. You are not your status in life. And, for some people, that belief that you are will be there until you get those things. And then there will be a next level of evolution to understand the true meaning of life beyond what you have and what you own. It is really easy for people with this placement to get into the trap thinking, if I just had more money, I'd be happy. And really to dive into this quest for more money, more financial stability, all of that stuff, really thinking and believing that if only I was a millionaire, then everything would be okay. And overcoming that and coming into the awareness that money isn't really going to make you happy, that, sometimes that is an escape from whatever could be changed right now in this moment. That is also one of the lessons that this Pluto placement can have to go through. Some people with this placement can actually get other people to pay for things for them. And so this is one way that it will express, is people who will just have a really easy time securing other people's money. Now, this could be a partner who pays for all the bills. This could be a parent, who pays for things. It can be any kind of way, but oftentimes people with this placement can be, I would say, overly dependent financially on others. And it can be financially or otherwise, where there is just this dependence on other people, this fear of being out on your own, this need to attach to someone else, fear that you can't make your own way in life. That you're not going to be okay unless someone else is paying for something for you or supporting you in some way. Sometimes people with this placement will actually get into a relationship with someone in power, someone who is higher on the social ladder than they are, and, in hopes to sort of gain the attention or the recognition that, I think of like a groupie who it's like their goal is to feel like they're in that higher level in life, even though they haven't quite done, they're not the ones doing the work, they're not the ones creating the things, that the success or building whatever it is. So that is one sort of temptation of this placement. Another temptation of this second house Pluto is going into debt, living beyond your means, spending more than you make, having a car that you can't really afford. Others will just have to live through a lot of lack in their life, a lot of financial hardship, a lot of challenges, a lot of working really hard for money. And just sometimes I think with this placement, you can feel stuck in that. You can feel stuck in a life where you are just working so hard. You're always in a deficit. You feel like you never have enough money. Now, keep in mind that for some people, this is a feeling that reality doesn't reflect, right? So for some people with this placement, you'll feel like you don't have enough money even when you do, and you just want to chase it and chase it and chase it. Other people will feel like they don't have enough money because they really don't have enough money. And, the process of working, gaining income for your skills, all of that is just way more challenging. Sometimes with this placement, you can actually be denied your parents' resources because you don't share their values. Now, this usually happens more often if you have a parent who you have very, very different values with. And so sometimes that can happen with this placement. So there is a possibility for people with this placement that even if they do build up wealth, if they do build up a lot of money, it can be taken. That transformative Pluto can go both ways, right? So some people perhaps with this placement could start off doing better and have some kind of time in life where a lot of things are lost. But the thing is, it's more likely to have this kind of experience if you have no concept of the evolutionary lesson and you're not learning it. Okay, so you can be skilled with this placement, you can be gifted, you can be talented, but you can struggle to make money if you don't know how to connect with others. And this is because that 8th house polarity point is about merging with other people. Now, in some cases, this is like financially and like sexually, because the 8th house is like the house of your finances with other people, other people's money, deep intimacy. But this can apply to the second house Pluto person in any situation. Any situation which you normally would withdraw from socially and not connect in with the other people, that applies here. So this is what happens with this placement, is that if you have worked hard on your skills, if you have developed a craft, anything you're good at, but you haven't found the way to deliver it to society, to connect with the people who need that skill and really connect in with them, then you will be isolated, and you will not, your offerings or your services or whatever you do will not be seen even, people, there won't be the connections to deliver, as the vehicle to deliver the products or services. For Pluto's second house people who are more spiritual, there is a need to open up to different kind of rituals, different kind of practices. So it's almost like whatever you're drawn to, the more you can open up to different ways of practicing spirituality, different, things, different types of meditation, different types of yoga, different types of for some reason I'm getting Tai Chi, and I don't know if that's for someone in particular, but different kinds of energy work. Don't just try Reiki and then try Tai Chi, and then try breathing through your nostrils. Or there's a need here, a real need to be open to new things, because this second house Pluto does tend to make you naturally a little bit more closed off to new things, a little bit more kind of set in your own ways, and going through life almost, you can almost get on this autopilot of like, this is the store I go to at this time of day, and these are the 3 foods I buy, and then this is what time I make lunch, and you could be like, I go to the park on this day at this time, but I only go to this park, and you could just find yourself living your life in a way that is just the same exact thing every single week. Now, keep in mind, this does depend on other placements, and it also depends on how much you've worked with it versus how much you are sort of like getting sucked into it. Also, you gotta share. If you have this placement, you have to share, or like things won't work for you. Things won't open up in your life. You'll kind of be denied the things that you want in life if you don't share with others. Now, that can be sharing your time. It doesn't have to be giving your money away, but like being willing to share, being willing to, it's another side of the coin of that mingling that comes in that 8th house of sharing resources with other people. That could be situations where even if it's like, oh, I hate having roommates because I want to do everything myself, but having roommates might be exactly what you need to do to like connect in and really like work with someone else on something. Sharing can be a lot of things, it can be something literal like, hey, here, have some of my blueberries, but it doesn't necessarily have to be just endless giving. It's more about being willing to participate in the give and take of life. Okay, this is a strong physical and sexual placement. So people with this placement, Pluto in the second house, really do need to let that physical or sexual energy out on a regular basis. Otherwise, it builds up. So for someone with this placement, if your life starts getting stagnant, you can look at, how much you're moving, how much you're working out, and how much sex you're having. And those might be the answer. So once you have overcome some of your own limitations with this placement, you can actually have this gift of like really identifying and helping other people to understand and transcend their own limits. It's almost like you'll have this radar to be able to really tap in to see, oh, this is what's limiting you. No, this is what's limiting you. Whereas someone else might not be able to see that. That's true after the person with this placement has done the work to really evolve, to really step in more to their 8th house energy of sharing, of giving and take with others, of intimacy, of making deep connections. So a little more on the polarity point here, that 8th house, is that sometimes people with this placement, wherever you have Pluto, you will have confrontations in the house that your polarity point is. So for you guys, for Pluto in the second, this is actually probably going to show up as people confronting you about your belief systems. Now, this doesn't always show up as someone directly saying, hey, what you believe is wrong. It can actually be people showing up in your experience whose beliefs are so outside of yours that it is jarring to you, that it's like almost offensive or upsetting to you, like, oh my God, I can't believe they think that way. And so you'll have situations where, and this could be something as simply as you state an opinion thinking everyone thinks the same way, and you look around the room and realize everyone disagrees with you, and you're like shocked. So situations like this that can cause that shock of not really fully being able to see that, like, oh, someone might actually have another opinion. Now, again, this only lasts until you can kind of understand it, see it, work with it. And so, depending on where you're at, this may or may not resonate. Most people, it's going to resonate when you were younger, and then however much you've learned is however much you've learned. Okay, so also with this polarity point, you can actually have encounters with people who help you see how you are limiting yourself. Now, again, this can be what I just talked about, where it's like they're not really trying to, they're just saying, oh, hey, I do this thing. And it's like so outside of your experience. Like I remember the first person who told me they ate one meal a day, which is actually not that crazy. It's a common thing that people do. People do intermittent fasting, and sometimes they bring that to one meal a day. So they're eating all their food at one time. I've done some research on this since then, but I remember at that time being like, what? You eat only one meal a day? And thinking, right, because I was still kind of programmed or whatever, that like they weren't eating anything, which isn't what they said, right? It wasn't what they said. It was so outside of my comfort zone. But then later that information ended up being things that I started learning and almost integrating into my life, where now I have eaten one meal a day before. I have done an intermittent fasting. I'm not saying you should. I don't give advice on whether people should or should not fast. That's something between you and your medical professional. But I am saying that someone came into my experience and shocked me a little. And is that shock why later on down the road I ended up doing it? I don't know. Maybe it opened me up to that new potential reality that I didn't know existed before. Now, you can tell if these are the right people for you if they encourage you to be self-reliant. Okay, and this is a good indicator for Pluto in the second house, whether someone who comes into your life is good for you or not good for you. Is the people who are good for you will encourage you to be self-reliant. They will not think they have to step in and save you, financially or otherwise. Okay, and then the people who don't encourage you to be self-reliant, the people who encourage you to rely on them and treat you like you need them, I'm telling you, run the other way, because this will never work for Pluto in the second house. Okay, and I know that like for some people, it's right for them to be in a relationship and to not have to work or, take care of the home. And I'm not against any of that. This is not my opinion on gender roles or roles in life. There are people out there who they are okay to use other people's resources, and they're not going to have the same sort of energetic response. So there are people like that who will not have the same energetic pushback that Pluto in the second house will. So if you ever wonder why other people get away with that, why other people can get other people's resources and not seem to have any consequences for it, maybe those people don't have their Pluto in the second house. Pluto in the second house is here to learn self-reliance. And so any kind of relationship or situationship or situation at all where you are taking more than you are earning, in whatever way, shape, or form, it will probably end up being removed. So also for this placement, when it comes to sexuality, because the 8th house really does deal a lot with sex, and not just sex, but sex that is from intimacy, sex that is from a connection with another person, right? Because the fun dating sex, that goes in the 5th house. That's like when you first meet someone. And maybe you're not serious about them yet, or maybe you're never going to be. But for the Pluto second house people, to work with your Pluto and your evolution, your evolutionary, transformation here, is to connect with the people you have sex with, to have a true bond, an emotional connection with the people that you are getting involved with. Now, this may not be natural for this placement. This might be fine for some, but Also, I think some Pluto second housers will actually feel very uncomfortable with this idea. They will want to have control, and they will maybe have a fear of losing control that comes from trusting someone while having sex with them. Another thing that can be helpful for this placement is like Tantra or other kinds of practices like this that really involve presence, that bring presence and sexuality together. That can actually be a really healing, very helpful tool for people with this placement. So once again, the idea here is to merge with others without being dependent upon them. So also with this placement, power really comes into play here. Power struggles especially with authority figures, can happen here. You can accidentally or on purpose sometimes sort of throw your weight around. And if you try to assert dominance over people, they will resent you. Very much so. There is definitely a sort of magnetic ability with this placement to get people to do what you want, if your focus and your attention is in the right place. And so this really has to come, for someone who struggles with maybe other placements, with not believing things are possible, or, has other challenges like this, that stuff needs to be cleared first. But once that is cleared, the Pluto in the second house person has a lot of power they can harness, and they can use that power to get people to do what they want to do, whether that be being a boss, whether that be just having a lot of influence in a situation. They just have the ability to influence others. But again, remember that, when you have this placement, if you're trying to assert your will in it at all, it's not going to work. It has to come from a different place. Sometimes people with this placement who are generous will end up having extreme wealth, and they'll also be able to really, really help others. Okay, there is a special gift here of being able to really, really, really help people who need it. With this placement sort of tendency to retreat into itself, it can actually be quite easy to just say, no, I don't really have time for that. But if you say yes to helping people especially people who can't help themselves, that is when they will be so grateful, and you have the power to change the course of their lives. Okay, so don't sleep on this ability. Now, there is a strong desire for authority with this placement, that second house of owning, and, Pluto representing power, this ownership, this desire to be on top, this desire to have power is part of the evolutionary lesson of your soul, but you don't just get it for being good at what you do. You get it for how much you've helped people, how much you've connected with people. And that doesn't mean working your way up to the top and just sleazeballing it. I mean true connections. Truly connecting with people is your path to success. And with this desire for authority, there is a need to remember to channel this into healthy activities, so that you're not tempted to try to have power over people or take control over things that aren't helpful or that can be more destructive. Sometimes you might find that people will envy you or even turn against you because they recognize this power inside of you that you may not even see yourself, and then they want to be in competition with you. So if this is happening, you have the ability to just, not let it even faze you. So if this does happen to you, know that what they are jealous of is your potential that they maybe realize they don't have. So what you need with this placement, first of all, you need a strong understanding of what you are capable of. You need to know your skills and know them well. You need to know your abilities. You need to know what you're good at. You need to have confidence in what you do. And if you don't feel like you have that, then building that confidence in what you're good at, what you're capable of, who you are, and what you stand for is very, very important to get the results out of this powerful placement. Working on releasing attachments can really be supportive to this placement too, because oftentimes people with second house Pluto can have a strong desire for wealth, for money, for physical things. And it's not that you can't get those things, but that desire, that sort of almost obsession possibly, is something that can be worked with and may need to be worked with if you find that it's so strong that you're not able to manifest. If that's the case, working on finding spiritual tools that help you release desire, how to hold an intention without strangling it with too much desire. So that's something this placement can work on as well. And then, last but not least, you guys, learning how to communicate with other people. Really stepping into your value and then being able to connect with other people so they see what you have to offer them, and letting it be all about them. And, really, really focusing on how you can communicate with others and be of service to mankind, even if you are running a business. Really focusing on how to communicate your offer and how to help the people that you are in business to help. Really focusing on that service aspect is essential for this placement to do well as remembering to connect with other people. No man is an island. And as much as I know this placement would rather do everything yourself, learning when and how to not do things yourself, learning what you should delegate, learning what you should let other people help you with, being willing to let other people in. These are all super important aspects of this placement. So I hope this video helped you learn something about yourself. Comment below if you got something out of it. I always love hearing from you guys. You can book a private astrology consultation using the link below. You can also join my crash course in reading a natal chart this Thursday. Join me live. We're going to go over how to scan and understand the different points in the chart and how to really start reading the chart. And then you can also come join us on Friday for the live astrology readings. These will be natal aspects. They're mini readings and they're $35. So you can just come check it out, see what it's like to get one placement read, or even just ask a question in between readings. So join us on that. That video is up. You can set the reminder now if you'd like. And I hope to see you guys there. And I'll see you all in the next video.